Hey, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. So you guys had some great breakout sessions this morning. Hope it was very valuable to you. And we're going to tie that all in as we finish up the day and continue to just have a good time here. So hope everybody's having fun. Hope everyone's enjoying Washington, D.C. and the nation's capital's finest. So, enjoy the time while you're here. So Mr. Lyons retired from the Army as a Major General after 37 years of distinguished service to our nation, and now is currently serving in a civilian capacity as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Integration. In this role, he serves as the Principal Advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manpower and Reserve Affairs in support of the Assistant Secretary of Defense's Title X role of providing overall supervision of the Manpower and Reserve Affairs for the Department of Defense. He is responsible for both the seamless integration of reserve affairs across DoD and strategic engagement on all reserve component matters. This includes liaisoning with the Reserve Forces Policy Board, the Reserve Component Chiefs, and the Council of Governors, as well as exercising primary responsibility for unique reserve component programs to include the DoD Star-Based Program, National Guard Youth Challenge Program, International Reserve Component Programs, as well as Innovative Readiness Training, and Reserve Component Family and Employer Programs and Policy. Prior to this role, he was a member of the Senior Executive Service, where he assumed the duties of Director, Defense Personnel and Family Support Center at the Department of State, as well as his service performing the duties of the Director of the Army National Guard. He really wanted the Air National Guard position. As a Major General, he also served as the Adjutant General for the Nebraska National Guard. Mr. Lyons, then a colonel, deployed to Afghanistan as Commander, 209th Regional Security Assistance Command, Combined Joint Task Force Phoenix 5. Mr. Lyons holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Bellevue University and a Master of Science degree from the U.S. Army War College. He's a graduate of Capstone, George C. Marshall Senior Executive Seminar, and National and International Strategic Course, National and International Security Course at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, Army Strategic Leadership Development Program, and the Joint Senior Reserve Officer course. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to you my boss, Mr. Judd Lyons.
Thanks, Trey. Hey, let the record reflect, I told him not to read that whole thing. He just ignored me. Hey, good morning, everyone. It really is a pleasure to be here and welcome all of you to the workshop here. I know that many of you traveled a long distance to be here. I'm really grateful our community partners are here. It demonstrates, I think, the continued support both on the military side and our civilian community partner side support for innovative readiness training. For the government civilians, and I know we're webcasting here, our congressional members and their staffs, I want to thank them for their support that allows us to continue this valuable work in IRT. And to our military participants here, as Colonel Scott's mentioned verbosely, I've been in your boots. I was privileged to serve for over 37 years. I spent almost 10 years of that time as a traditional guardsman. I worked in a bank in my local community, so I balanced my drill time and my annual training time with the civilian career. I've been a military technician, a dual status technician. I've been active guard and reserve. I served on Title X and had the privilege to do some time over at the State Department. So what I'm trying to communicate here to our military members in particular is it's always a challenge to maintain that balance between your call to service and the pull that has, while also maintaining good contact with your family, your loved ones, your civilian employers, if you're a student, your professors, and other things. So it says a lot about not only our active component service members, but our reserve component and guard members. It just highlights the call to duty, and we're so grateful that there are men and women out there that answer that call each and every day. For some of I think this will resonate with some of our community members. You all really are the face of the Department of Defense. In some of our communities, due to the geographic dispersion, you may be or one of your people that are in your units may be the only face of a person in uniform that our civilian partners have the opportunity to interact with. So it's a tremendous responsibility that we represent ourselves in a way that earns trust, earns confidence, and fosters that collaboration with our community partners. And you do that so well. So to our community partners here today and those that may be listening, you're the reason we're here today. You see the value that our military assets can bring to our communities, and it's your vision that makes innovative readiness training possible. It allows us to do this exceptional work in partnership with you, and we exist because of your openness to our military members coming into your communities and your continued support with supplies, materials, and other support. So you really are the core of the program when it comes to IRT. So we want to thank you for that. As I've had the opportunity this morning to meet with some of you, I'm again reminded of the critical importance of community partnership and the valuable linkage that it provides between our military and our civilian partners. IRT program is a shining example of what can be accomplished through collaboration. It provides valuable expertise and operational execution of meaningful missions for our units and initiatives for our communities. And it simultaneously increases our military readiness. And as we all know, we help our communities in tangible, tactical ways. We could be building a road. It might be doing dental work. It could be providing someone eyeglasses. And these contributions are incredibly important, as everyone in this room knows, especially to the individual that we assist and to the service member who has the opportunity to practice his or her military occupational specialty in a realistic environment. But what we do at IRT and what makes this training so valuable to the Department of Defense is its direct linkage to the strategic guidance embodied in our National Defense Strategy. The global environment has required the military to undergo a readiness resurgence. The National Defense Strategy significantly changed our focus in DoD from contingency operations that we've all lived for the last 18 years to great power competition. This has forced DoD to think differently about how we train our force. So the IRT program is helping to prepare our warfighters for the current global environment through engagement with our community partners and providing creative training opportunities that ultimately increases our unit readiness. IRT program facilitates this in 3 ways, and I'd like to talk about those briefly. Building military readiness, fostering partnerships, and through business reform by developing and implementing innovative and adaptive approaches to training. So let's talk about building military readiness, a key tenet of our National Defense Strategy. The entire strategic plan can be summarized for our purposes around this theme of readiness. The National Defense Strategy describes an environment that is challenging. I just want to quote here briefly from the Defense Strategy. Quote, "We face an ever more lethal and disruptive battlefield combined across domains and conducted at increasing speed and reach, from close combat throughout overseas theaters and reaching to our homeland," unquote. So IRT helps prepare our service members for the current global environment through engagement with community partners. We cannot have collective readiness in our units without service members who are proficient in their individual skill sets. Great power competition that we've talked about demands ready units, and IRT missions help provide that individual readiness. For example, during the mission at Camp Kamasa in Mississippi from March 4th through July 28th, the Air Force Reserve, Marine Corps Forces Reserve, and Air National Guard constructed a bridge over a small creek. They installed additional site utilities and the construction of 8 duplex cabins. The Air National Guard's 200th Red Horse Squadron, anybody in here from there? Okay. They worked on this project before going directly to deployment, which allowed them to deploy with increased readiness as a result of what they did in IRT. Let's talk about fostering partnerships, and if you'll bear with me, I just want to provide another quote from our National Defense Strategy. Quote, "Our partners in sustaining security are also more than just nation states. Multinational organizations, non-governmental organizations, corporations, and strategic influencers provide opportunities for collaboration and partnership. So in FY19 alone, IRT Missions provided over 484,000 military training hours and provided over $26 million in value to our community partners. So IRT provides an effective and agile training environment. An example is the new talk to who's from Alaska? Am I going to pronounce this right? Murtavik, sir. Murtavik. I knew I was going to mess that up. A relocation project in Alaska. This was an incredibly challenging project, and it provided our civil engineers a unique partnership opportunity and engagement while assisting the strategically valuable Arctic region. And finally, executing our DoD missions, which cross multiple lanes of value, are all part of the Business Reform Initiative. The National Defense Strategy accurately assesses, this is my last quote, cultivating a lethal, agile force requires more than just new technologies and posture changes. It depends on the ability of our warfighters and the department's workforce to integrate new capabilities, adapt warfighting approaches, and change business practices to achieve mission success, unquote. So while in Colonias, Texas, the Civil Affairs mission performed by the Army Reserve in Webb County, Texas, afforded our military members realistic training by being embedded in a community, finding their needs, and relating these needs to the broader community. This is an example of innovative and adaptive approaches to training, which is what business reform is all about. This work that the Army Reserve completed is directly linked to Civil Affairs teams' missions in remote locations around the world. So this year I've had the pleasure to travel to 3 different locations. I've been to California, New York, and Puerto Rico to see IRT missions in action. There's nothing quite like being at a site to appreciate the social and community value of IRT. The impact that this has and that you all have each and every day on these missions is tremendous, and it benefits both our country's national defense and our community well-being. So this coming year in FY20, as we go forward here, there's more projects for our communities and innovative training for our service members. I would just leave you with this thought. So as we approach these missions in FY20, take advantage of every single opportunity. If you're out there executing the mission, or you're a planner behind the scenes, a program manager, let's maximize each and every opportunity to collaborate with a community partner. But the end goal is to build readiness in our units. So if we provide that opportunity to exercise our military occupational specialties, units that come out of that are going to be better prepared for the global environment, and our community partners are going to benefit. So it's a win-win. So I want to thank you for what you do in innovative readiness training, and I look forward to being here for the bulk of the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Please sit down. Nothing I said warrants that.
I feel like now I can be worthy. Oh, wait, it just started working right as I did that, too.
Keep it as a backup.
Thank you, sir, very much. Wow, thank you, Mr. Lyons. That was incredible. I'm really excited to bring to you our next session, which is the community panel. You had a chance, thank you, Kaylin. You had the wonderful opportunity to hear from your military mission OICs and military professionals that had a plethora of experience this morning working their CE and medical missions. And now it's time, and it was a perfect intro for Mr. Lyons, to see the community's perspective of these missions that we go out to. So we've invited these wonderful guests, and they took it upon themselves to come here, so thank you for that. And we're going to do introductions and then a Q&A with them to see their perspective of the missions, how it impacts the communities, and then just different pieces that you need to know as planners embarking on this journey or beginning to embark on this journey over the next year in your partnerships. Before we bring up our first guest, you have note cards, and if you don't have a note card, you can certainly raise your hand and grab one. But the note cards are for you to ask questions that you want to hear from the community panel on. It's very often that if you have the question, there's at least 10 more people in the room that have the same question, and we love to address it and give them the opportunity as a whole so everyone can learn from it. So just hold your note card up once you have that question on there, and we'll bring it up to the stage. And for those of you trying to get silly and put jokes on those note cards, I do read them before I actually read them out loud, all right? Okay, so without further ado, Miss Mary Kitchens, please welcome her to the stage. Hi, Miss Mary. Okay, so, all right, now most of you know Miss Mary Kitchens out of Camp Kamasa, but first, can you please take a moment and introduce yourself to these wonderful
Okay. Hi,
individuals?
Mary Kitchens. I'm from Mississippi. I am the founder and executive director of Mississippi's Toughest Kids, Camp Kamasa. In 1977, my 3-year-old son had cancer. He was very sick. He had several surgeries. He had radiation, chemo, a hard couple of years, obviously. But in 1984, he went to the first camp that the state of Mississippi ever had for children with special needs, for cancer, kids with cancer, and he loved it. And now, as a 45-year-old, he's still going to camp and helping other children with cancer have a wonderful time. That one camp, though, has moved 7 different times to 6 different locations since 1984, and that's really rough. Every time you move, the parents are apprehensive about where you're going, the children are apprehensive, and the medical staff is really apprehensive because most camps don't have an infirmary and don't need one. So we started thinking somebody ought to build a camp where all the groups, not just cancer, but burn camps, sickle cell, muscular dystrophy, all these different groups could come and hold one camp at one facility. Somebody ought to, and finally it occurred to us, I think it was God occurring to us, we ought to do it. And so we started the process of becoming a 401c3, of raising money, looking for land. We found land and bought land, borrowed the money, bought the land in 2013, 2017. We paid off the land. Boy, that was so exciting. But what now? We were talking about building a $24 million facility, and we just had a hard time in that 4 years raising $650,000. And that's when we learned about the IRT program. And it was so exciting. It made a world of difference. Not only did it bring the military in, it gave us that push to believe that we really could build this facility in the poorest state in the United States, that it could happen. And so on 326 acres, we are now building a camp for children and adults with special needs, and it will be a year-round, totally handicapped accessible facility for everybody that we can find and some we haven't even thought of yet that would need to come to a facility like this.
That is incredible. Ms. Mary, how did you learn to apply? How did you learn about the IRT program?
I had heard that the CBs on the Mississippi coast might come and build a lake for us. And that was really exciting. That was more than we had. And so we were contacting them. And there's no way to tell this part of the story without saying I was having wonderful conversations with them, but they wasn't going anywhere. And we hired a Department of Development director named Tanya Mohawk, who is here today. And she said, oh, my daddy worked for the CBs. Her husband is full-time National Guard, and it was a natural. She started working for us. She started talking to them, and everything started changing. And they said, this is too big for just us. And the CBs sent all of our plans, all of our ideas, and all to the Pentagon and said the IRT needs to look at this because they need land cleared, they need roads built, they need ditches put in, all these pipes done, structure. You know, there's so many components that we had to have at a full camp. And so very quickly, everything started changing. And in 2017, we found out the IRT was going to come to our community. It's very exciting.
That's awesome. So we've come 2 years now. We've completed 2 IRT missions,
Right.
and then we're planning to come for this next fiscal year. Can you tell us just what we've done in those 2 years and then what the plan is for next year?
Okay. I remember so well when the first group of planning came out to see the land, the planning committee came out to look at the land and standing out there, and it was a jungle. I mean, we had thousands of pine trees about this high, planted everywhere, bushes, and there's a pulpwood road that led through the camp. That was it. It was terrible conditions out there, and someone standing out there said, in a year, you won't recognize this place. It'll be totally different. It was hard for us to really understand that. But when they started coming, when the program started coming, the end of March, April of 2018, they cleared about 50 acres where the Camp Corps will be, built roads, put in a maintenance barn, and built an open-air recreation building. Neither one are completed, but the only reason they're not completed is because y'all are storing materials in there. That's where the wood is. That's where the shingles are. That's where the siding is. Everything's being stored under these shelters, so they'll easily be completed later. But that was the first year. The second year, the duplex cabins went in. Now, a cabin, I think of a cute little cabin in the woods, but these cabins are 2,000 square feet each. We got to have wheelchairs been able to manipulate around every cabin. So the 8 cabins that are built right now will house 160 people. That's without bunking them. We'll have some camp facilities that will come to the camp. They have bunk beds, so you can double it. But in case this wasn't clear, this is for summer 5-day camps for these different groups to come use. And then through the rest of the year, adults could use it for 5-day camps. So they could be retreats, so they could be daycares. They could be nursing homes could come out there. Being the oldest one in the room, I feel free to talk about the nursing homes. They can come out to there and have a day of fishing, making crafts, doing things, making ceramics and all. So it's a full-fledged camp with the horses and the lake and the swimming pool, ceramics, a multi-purpose building where you could stay all day, a teaching kitchen for mainly kids with diabetes and Crohn's disease can learn special recipes. So it will be the nicest camp, probably in the United States, but certainly in Mississippi when we get through with the skill that y'all are bringing in to get this camp built.
Oh, wow.
Did I answer the question?
Well, on that, no, thank you, Miss Mary. Okay, thank you. Give Miss Mary a round of applause. Okay, we'll go ahead and go down. Thanks, ma'am. Can you hit the slide, please? All right. Thank you, Miss Mary. All right, Mr. Joel Evans, please come on up. I didn't even get to talk to Joel before we get to see each other, but it's been so a while. How are you? Mr. Joel Evans and I, when I was a medical project manager a couple years ago, he actually had his first IRT. So we really cut our teeth together with this program and went through a lot. So I heard great things about the mission this year. So can you please just tell us a little bit about yourself, Joel?
Thank you. I work with a community action agency. We address the issues of poverty in Southeast Missouri. Southeast Missouri is more akin to the Deep South than it is the rest of Missouri. We are culturally and agriculturally and geographically more similar to the Delta area of the South than we are the rest of Missouri. And with that, we face some of the socioeconomic challenges that the Deep South face. 2 of our 6 counties are the poorest in the state of Missouri. They compete with each other in different factors of poverty to outpour each other, unfortunately. And with those poverty issues come a lot of health issues. So the IRT mission has been a godsend in the 4 missions we've had in Southeast Missouri. I fell into IRT kind of by accident. I had worked with Delta Regional Authority on some projects and was invited to a meeting in Kentucky. They said, Joel, we want you to come and hear about this medical project. And the application had been submitted a year before. We were already well into the mission. I had no idea about that. There was a big group from Kentucky there, a big group from Tennessee, a big group from Arkansas, and me, the sole person from Missouri. So I went in thinking I'm going to hear about this great project, and it sounded wonderful. Went back for the second meeting I was invited to, and the light bulb clicked on that I'd been invited to a neighbor's Tupperware party and didn't know it. The colonel that was there said, if we don't identify a site in Missouri today, there will not be a Missouri site. And I didn't realize until that moment that I was the Missouri partner and we were going to have to do something. So Christina Wade was with me that day, and we drove immediately back to Hayti, Missouri. We're on the phone the whole way with the school district, first time we'd ever talked to them. They were willing to meet us, and we were able to set up an appointment, able to get a site identified that day. Since then, we have done 3 additional missions. This summer was our most successful, I think. We learn every time. We learn that it's different every time. expect change in every mission, and this one was no exception. We partnered with community action agencies. There's about 1,000 of us across 1,000 agencies across the United States. We partnered with a couple community action agencies, one in Illinois, and had planned to partner with one in Kentucky, thinking that community action was the right partner in every community, and we found out quickly that in Illinois they were the perfect partner. In Kentucky they didn't have the capacity to do it, so we had to identify a new partner at the last minute. But had a great mission and met the objectives of training for the military, and the training that we received was far more valuable. My frontline staff and middle managers really had the opportunity to step into some leadership roles, step into a position where they were faced with logistic challenges, personnel challenges, decision making in a constant barrage for 2 weeks. That some challenges that they wouldn't face in their normal job in a year's time or more. So it really gave my staff a trial by fire and was beneficial to us. Another huge positive for us was the relationship it helped us build in the community. We worked with over 50 different community partners in 3 counties, some who were our neighbors who we were familiar with but hadn't worked with intimately before. And we were able to really cement some relationships, find out what each other could offer. We had a community resource room in the clinics, and as patients would leave military services, they would be handed off to us, and those community partners would rally around the patients and figure out who was best suited to meet the continuing needs of that patient. So we really it really was a positive experience for us that will go on well into the future.
Thank you. And what do you do when you're not working IRT full-time?
I am the president and CEO of the Community Action Agency. We manage about 50 different projects designed to combat poverty and the effects of poverty in our 6-county area.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Joel. All right. We're just going to move you right on, Joel. And then please welcome Miss Carol Jewett to the stage. Thank you, Carol. All right. Carol came to us from Kentucky. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your mission.
Thank you. First off, let me say I am so honored to be here with each of you, and we are grateful in Kentucky to be a part of the IRTs. Our governor, Governor Bevin, loves the IRTs. He was in the military himself, so it's great to be here. I'm also the proud mom of a Marine and the sister-in-law of an Army member, so I appreciate what you do. This was my second IRT this past summer. I've been with the Kentucky Department for Local Government for about 2.5 years now. And my boss, Commissioner Donahue, had gotten involved in an IRT through the DRA, Delta Regional Authority, and she sits on that board on behalf of our governor. And Western Kentucky had done some IRTs, and she wanted to bring those to Eastern Kentucky.
That's fantastic. And what do you do outside of your participation in IRT?
So my role with DLG, I also spearhead the Governor's Local Issues Conference, which is a conference for about 700 to 900 local officials each year, and a myriad of other projects.
Fantastic. And how did you learn about IRT to apply?
So that was through Commissioner Donahue and the DRA. We applied for the IRT and received it for a 2018 IRT mission that was in 4 counties in Eastern Kentucky. Kentucky also gets an additional grant through the Appalachian Regional Commission, the ARC, and that allows us to do extra things that the DoD grant doesn't allow, so we're not a burden on our communities. Things like forklifts that are needed, or porta potties, or shower trailers. It also allows us to promote the IRTs and that way engage the community a little bit deeper. But the goal of that is just to not be a burden on those communities. So we're able to cover utility costs, supplies that might be needed, that type of thing.
Thank you. And Carol, was this your first mission this last year?
No, this was my second one.
Your second. Okay.
So Operation Bobcat was the first. We were in 4 counties in Eastern Kentucky last year, Lee, Owsley, Breathitt, and Estill. I think the Kentucky Air National Guard took the lead on that, and there were more than 11,000 procedures that were done, and that was a 10-day mission, I believe. And then this year was my second, and I certainly appreciated working with Captain Polos and the team this year, Senior Master Sergeant Houston. I was familiar with Huddle, but I didn't always have time to use Huddle, nor did I know all the acronyms and the taglines that you use for your documents. So I really appreciated Captain Polos texting me before each conference call. We had those 2 biweekly conference calls, and I would get text messages, do you need anything, do you have this document? And he would send them to me personally, or Captain Bates would, or Senior Master Sergeant. So that was really helpful for me. Even though I'd already done an IRT, serving it up and making it easy for me, because I wore other hats, as everybody does during the day, just made it easy for me to be responsive.
Oh, fantastic. So we still need to get some Air Force in your family, but for now, thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Andy Crossin, can you please come in? All right. Mr. Andy Crossin comes to us from Georgia, and he has been a multi-year project as well in East Central Georgia. All right. Thanks, sir.
Major McDonald told them, don't give me a microphone. For some reason, they gave me a microphone instead of a mic. So this
Please.
can't be good for everybody.
Well, that's okay. At least I can reach over and pull it a little bit easier. But can you please introduce yourself, where you're from, and what you do in your job?
So I'm Andy Crossin. I'm the director of the CSRA Regional Commission, which is located in Augusta, Georgia. We have 13 counties and 39 cities that we provide services for. Of those 13 counties, Georgia has 159 counties, second only to Texas. Of those 13 that we have, 6 or 7 consistently score among the poorest in the state. So we obviously have an area that needs services, has zero access in many of those communities to dental, optometry, or any kind of medical services. And so for the last 2 years, we've been able to offer that through the IRT to those folks.
Oh, fantastic. And how did you personally get involved in the beginning?
So, and it's sort of, I think, a common theme that runs here is originally one of my counties was talking about doing an IRT, and pretty quickly they realized that it was way bigger than they were, or they were able to handle, and so they approached the regional commission. And because we work with so many local governments, we wound up becoming the applicant and becoming the liaison between the local communities and the military for both of those programs.
And quite well, I hear. How many sites did you have on this last mission?
So actually, both of our missions have done 5 sites. Only one of those sites was duplicated in the 2-year period. So we were able to touch 9 different counties over the 2-year period.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go straight into our questions, and I'm going to start with you, Andy. What was one thing missed during the planning meetings that you wish you could go back and account for? And I wrote down your answers if you need help. How you perceive the military when they come in.
Oh, yeah. So the first thing we learned in the first IRT, and maybe it's because Major Rundle and his team that came in appeared to be so perfectly knowledgeable of the whole program, was what we learned pretty quickly is most of the people doing the IRT had never done an IRT. But of course, from the community's perspective, what we saw was military comes in, the expectation is you all know exactly what you're doing. And so we sort of sat back and let them run the show. And as we started to grow and learn to work with them, we realized there was opportunity for all of us to sort of work together and learn together throughout that process.
Fantastic. Miss Carol, I think you had a good answer too on this one. Okay, I'll throw it up.
Prompt me a little bit. on that one
Patience.
with-
Impatience, a
Patience.
lesson in patience.
So for this past year, Operation Cold Country, the previous year we were in schools, which made it really easy. Those were the largest buildings in those smaller communities. This year, the IRT dates overlapped the start of school, so we couldn't be in the school buildings. I really appreciated the military's patience with me because we couldn't manage the timeline that was needed for the planning because we couldn't find the locations for the clinics and for bed down. So it was a process in working with those community partners. And so I'm called a community partner, but I have many community partners in those 4 counties that we worked with. And so it was finding that particular church or maybe that particular community building. And it just took time. And so each conference call that we had, it was, Carol, have you nailed down the 4 clinic sites? No, but maybe I can do it between now and our next call. And it wasn't until the final planning meeting, so we were on site doing the final planning meeting, that the last clinic site really came together. So I think the patience of the military and their understanding that the work was going on behind the scenes and it would come together, I really appreciated that.
That's perfect, thank you. And over to Miss Mary, what should OICs keep in mind when working with the communities? When we come into a community, we are in the military, so as Carol just mentioned, patience sometimes isn't as easy as we want it to be, and we have all these objectives we want to accomplish. So what other things aside from patience can our military members be prepared for as they're coming in with their first community meetings?
I don't know what in the world the initials mean that y'all use all the time. That was a big one. And that was me, learning those. The second year, everything, this past year, it was just so smooth and so easy because we had done one, had that first year. The first year, and someone, I think you used the term, we didn't know what we didn't know. There were things we didn't understand that were going on, but we didn't know what questions we should be asking. So the constant communication and talking to somebody was helpful. And then also having the same person, in our case, Chief Gilbin, to be with us last 2 years and will be next year, makes a big difference to have someone that I don't know what they're talking about, and have someone you can call and that's been with you before that you can, refer to. That helped a lot.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Joel, I know over the years you had a couple, but in the beginning, there was probably a lot that you were learning that first year right alongside me, as I was learning how to talk to you as well. What were some of the things that you remember working through, wishing that I knew at the time?
Early on, we were in the same boat. We didn't know what we didn't know. Thank God. We probably would have been scared to death had we known what we were getting into. So that was a big issue. One of the things that I think was most helpful in this most recent IRT was the development of a relationship between the military and the community well in advance. My organization had conference calls and face-to-face meetings with our community partners on a weekly basis, and Colonel Adamich assigned a liaison to be on those calls with us on a weekly basis. So we compiled a list of questions that we would fire at the sergeant. He didn't know the answers most of the time, but would take those back, and by the next week had answers for us. That ongoing, constant communication was hugely helpful. The lieutenant colonel and I talked every few days as we got closer to the mission, and developed a great relationship. And the personal relationship as well as professional relationship developed really helped the mission. He had a great understanding of the social nuances and cultural nuances of our community, and was able to understand how we work and how we think. In our community, probably true of most of the southern communities, trust means a lot. We have to get to know you before we can work with you, and I think that was hugely helpful.
It's almost like you knew my next question, so we're just going to segue into it. In the military, we're used to being around other military personnel, so it's common for us. But what we quickly realize is once we come into these communities, a lot of communities we enter, we might be the first military member they've ever seen in uniform. So oftentimes they assume that we're carrying guns or we're all in the Army, and then they find out we're in the Air Force and they think we're pilots. So how has the IRT missions changed the way your communities have viewed IRT? And we'll go across. Go ahead, Mary. Thank you.
Maybe they don't know what IRT is because they just know the military's in town. And they absolutely love that. Our community, like everybody's, I imagine, we don't get the opportunity to see a group of military. And the people in our community, a small town, have appreciated so much the camp being built, but even more, they're thankful for the opportunity to say to you, thank you for your service, because they don't get that. And if you're trying to decide where to go with your mission, every Thursday night you get a home-cooked meal if you come to Camp Kamasa. And it's one way of saying thank you for coming to our community. We make sure that that happens. And it's just a way to say thank you because people want to say thank you. And people want to, if they see you out during the week, buy you lunch. Or if you need some equipment, this in our town, some of the little stores and also, well, we have a forklift you can use, or we have a ladder, you need it, things that may not have been part of the equipment that was shipped. It's just a constant looking for ways they can help. And we post on the window at our office a big picture of every group that comes in. You get to get your picture made. Well, we're not. Big group picture, and they're all over our windows. And you see people all the time stopping and looking at the faces of the people that have been in Crystal Springs and the people that are serving our country. And they really, really appreciate the military more because they've had the opportunity. I know I'm talking too much. One other thing is over and over you hear people say everybody, especially young men, ought to be required to go to the military because they have the best manners, their britches are pulled up, they know how to act and treat, how to hold doors, and they say, yes, ma'am. And there's just things about the mannerisms of the military that a lot of our young people don't have. So we love having the military in town.
I think I need to send my children to your camp too. Thank you, Mary. Andy, it looked like you were ready to go. I mean, even though Major McDonald didn't want you to have a microphone, it's okay. This is a safe zone up here on the stage.
Rundle will tell you from the CSRA they will feed you every night, so not just Thursday night.
We got to step it up, Tanya.
So
we do provide food in the military as well.
Right.
Just to make that clear, 3 meals per day.
So our region includes Fort Gordon, and so the communities are very in tune with the military, work closely together with the military. A lot of people in the communities actually probably work on the post there. But what the community people who attend the IRT see is not just you in uniform, but you as the professional that you came in as. We've had people who first 50 years was the first time he'd ever been to a dentist. That the person was wearing a military uniform, that wasn't as important to him as what he got out of that visit. We've had a young lady who had 22 teeth pulled and went back to work that day because her mouth had never felt better. So it's not just the uniform side that you see. And if you do, in your initial tours, go to the elementary schools or the middle schools, every single one of the kids is going to call you Army Man. Really doesn't matter what you are, but you're going to be an Army Man. But the interaction that you all got to have with those school students and introducing them, a lot of them, first time they're really seeing people come through in uniform, I think long-term will play a big role in what they decide to do in their lives.
Thank you. And Carol, I know that first year you were talking about it was a local unit that wasn't local necessarily to the region that they were in, but a local unit within that state that got to participate and take the lead role. So I'm sure it was absolutely gratifying for them to serve their state. But outside of that, how else have you seen it change?
It was great for the Kentucky Air National Guard to be there on the ground in the state doing that IRT. That command group they were veterans of IRT, so they had done them before, but then doing them back for the state was great. And it was heartwarming to watch the kids and the people in general as the IRT went on interacting with the military. And I think that was a lot of your role in just putting them at ease. because the uniform itself commands respect, but it can also be a little intimidating when you see it in force. And but I think each person that I interacted with, the military personnel, showed a lot of kindness and a lot of compassion and really engaged the community in a one-on-one way and got to know them as people and they you as people, and I think that made a difference. One of the things that I noticed, especially last year, because it was my first time, the IRT is something that doesn't resonate with the civilian world. It's common to you to say IRT or even to say Innovative Readiness Project or training. It's military jargon. So we tried from our end this year, especially through our PR, to have a face of a community, a medical military personnel on all of our PR stuff, so that they could see that it was a physician, and also to overcome the perception that it was just for veterans, because I think there was a misconception about that. So it really took word of mouth for that to happen. So I don't know if that's something on your side, to do a little PR massage around it.
I saw the same thing in our community. We found ourselves teaching and educating the community about what an IRT was. IRT is just another acronym. We marketed it as a no-cost health clinic and focused on that instead of the term IRT. Internally within our groups, we refer to it as IRT, but the community didn't understand that. And we face the same challenges. Is it just for veterans? Are there income requirements? Are there residency requirements? So it took a big marketing effort and education effort to let people know exactly who was eligible and what to expect, and are these doctors training on us? And to get over to get beyond that no, they're competent, and that's what they do in their civilian life and military life, and they're coming here to work in a deployment-like setting is the scope. So it took an education piece to get to change from what is an IRT to this medical mission. We marketed our first few missions as Operation Healthy Delta, and that name is recognized in our area now as being that no-cost medical mission that the military professionals are providing.
I just want to note that he just said no cost. He did not use the word free.
I've had my
Thank you
hands
and our
slapped for that.
community Whoa, we don't actually slap hands, Joel. Okay, thank you. Clearly, words matter, right? On the military side, we know, or will be discussing resources that we bring to the table on the military piece of it and the logistics. But we also know that in this true partnership, there's a lot of resources that our community partners bring to the table, some that you've planned for, some that you have not planned for, some that you're relying on other entities to help provide. So can you please just share with us down the line some of the resources that you bring in and some of the trials and errors that you've had with them and challenges?
Sure. So we learned pretty quickly you all can't ask for anything. That's sort of drilled into us, just like no cost is, so you can't ask for anything. But we would often remind you, if you could at least talk about things you wish you had, that would be helpful for us to have a good idea. Forklifts is probably the number one item that we provided both missions when they're bringing the initial equipment in. None of you want to unload that by hand off of a truck, and so we were able to have a forklift come in and actually do that. We also were able, and the local communities all provide facilities. The local communities would also come in and provide snacks and water, particularly in Georgia in the summertime. Have plenty of water available for you and for the people who are at the site as well. So it is a give and take, and we know that you all have limited resources and what you can bring to the table. And then we are obviously welcome to help you in any way we can, because your success in it's going to be successful for everyone in the communities.
Thank you, Andy.
So one of the things we tried to do in Kentucky, Commissioner Donahue really wanted to create something that was sustaining. And so in conjunction with the IRT, both last year and this year, we tried to do what we call the DLG Resource Center, which essentially was like a health fair. And we invited the community folks, whether it was the local health departments or the local hospitals to have referrals desks or dentists. We also got University of Kentucky to have a table there talking about obesity issues. We had tables for Medicare, Medicaid resources. So we really wanted it to be an overall educational health and wellness sustainability program. And I know that that didn't make it easy sometimes for the clinics because the clinics were limited for the IRT, but the military was really accommodating to work with us to have these extra tables there. And I think that worked out really well. And as it turns out, as the week went on, they would find the military, through talking to the patients that came into the community, would find other things that they needed. So resources for dentures, for instance. So then we tried to find a resource for them and would have that table there. So just thinking about those things up front and how we can integrate that a little bit better, I think that was helpful for us and for our community and our patients.
Thank you.
We had a huge list of resources we were able to provide, and we had shower trailers. We had 3 clinics. One was at a church, the other 2 were at schools. At the church, we provided a shower trailer to augment the capacity of the showers for that church facility. And at the schools, we thought we'll be great. There's school, they have locker rooms, they have showers. But Carroll, Illinois is a very poor community, and we discovered on the final planning mission that the showers were not functional in the high school and hadn't been for years. We partnered with Delta Regional Authority. They were able to bring in a plumber and repair those showers for the school. They made a $10,000 investment in the school, so it made the site functional for the clinic and also left a lasting investment in that school in Carroll, Illinois as well. So they now have functioning showers in the locker rooms, and that will continue for years. Other resources, our local health departments were able to apply for and receive grant funding for lipid and other blood tests for every patient that walked through the door, which greatly helped with the scope of the mission. Heart to Heart International brought in their bus and were able to do immunizations for patients as they were leaving. Our local university provided a coach, which gave additional capacity for dental, so that the dental chairs, we were limited on the number of dental services that could be provided, and by the number of chairs, really. So by having that coach there that the military could use, it helped. Tell one quick story about how that helped. Had a young lady come in. She was 9 or 10 years old. She had a very visible cavity on her front teeth. She wouldn't talk in public much. She would cover her mouth when she did talk. She never smiled. She saw the poster for our military IRT at her school, took a photograph of it with her phone, took it home to her parents and said, I could get my teeth fixed. Her dad brought her in the first day. They didn't get there in time. All the spots were filled. Came in the next day, and I had heard their story by that time, and the spots were taken again. But I was able to talk to Colonel Robinson, a dentist, and told her the story, and she said, I'll see her myself. I'm in a command role, but I'm going to step back into a clinical role. We'll do it on the coach. The university's coach was set up for pediatric patients. She saw her there, and the young lady was able to be treated, and life-changing for her.
I love those stories. All right, Miss Mary, I know you have something good.
Our project is different because it's a construction program. It's not a medical clinic. It's a huge construction project, and so some of our challenges have been getting materials when we need them. And that a lot of times it's beyond our fault or anyone else's fault. We've ordered them, but then the companies that are sending them to us don't always get them to us as quickly as we need them to. So we have learned something about trying to stay way ahead of what we're going to need. Make sure we've been given information about what's going to be needed. And we have a foreman that we hired that's out there at the construction site all the time that works with the military. But he's the one kind of in charge of knowing from the military what they're going to need and getting those materials ordered as quickly as possible, because it has been a problem. They've always found other things they can do while they're waiting for it. But there were some things they had planned to do that we've had to delay because something didn't come in when it was supposed to. And so we're just constantly ordering, more materials.
Thank you. So this is going to caveat on that last question, but it's going to have a little bit more of a medical focus. This morning in our lessons learned panel with our military members and in our medical breakout, one of the concerns that they constantly have is the sustainability piece after we leave. Because, of course, these are all medical professionals and everyone cares, which is a good thing. We prefer that most often. So what are some of the ways that we could help some of our other communities? You guys all clearly have very good avenues of referral and sustainment on the medical side. What are some things we can bring to our other medical communities that maybe just haven't quite gone over the hump of finding those extra resources? Go ahead, Andy. Looks like you're ready.
I'll tell you that one of the biggest challenges we've seen each time for you all is that you're really there in two capacities. You're there in your military role for training purposes, but you can't take off the hat that you're a medical professional too. And the long-term sustainability of any of the services that are provided is the one thing that I think is probably the hardest for the trainees. Is they come in, they see these folks, they know they need long-term follow-up. Whether they're going to get it or not, they just don't know. I know that in our area, we prepare a list of local follow-up clinics and local providers that is given to every patient when they leave, just to get them understanding of where they need to show up or where they can turn for additional services. Over the 2-year period we've had oral cancer that was discovered. Unfortunately, that gentleman was able to be sent to a location where they're now taking care of him, and he's going and getting follow-up services. So I know that's the one thing you all concerned the most about is making sure long-term that they've got that care. The easiest way to do that for us would be to come back every year, and that way they can see you every year. But in lieu of that, I think letting them know where the community partners are that can help them is probably the biggest key to letting them. And then whether they make that decision to follow up or not, it's not really in our hands, but at least we know that we gave them an option to.
Thank you. Carol?
So I'll tag off of what Andy said. That's essentially what we've tried to do in Kentucky. So we provide a resource center page for the community, and we have that at each of the clinics. And that way the OSC or the resource center could have those and hand them out to each patient that came or went. We also, one of the things when the eyeglasses were fabricated toward the end of the IRT and they needed to be dispersed back to the community once the military left, we had those placed at the health departments. And we did that so that it drove the patients to the health department and would feel comfortable in coming to the health department to maybe have other needs addressed. One of the things that I wanted to mention that I didn't, we were concerned that we might not have vision screening at this year's IRT. And I knew from last year how key that was. It was a draw for people to come and get their vision tested and to get those no-cost single lens glasses made. And then once they were there for that, oh, this looks easy. Maybe I can do the wellness screening. Maybe I can do a dental exam. So I think that was important to have those full services at each of the clinics. I know that's not always possible, but I thought that was helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We have found that we learn at every clinic, every time we do this, that there are more resources that we could use. And even though this was our 4th mission, there are still things that pop up from the community needs that I haven't thought about. We have a substance abuse center in our community, and hadn't really thought about inviting them to the table, and saw that need, and it was after the fact. We need to get them on board. So if there were a way to build a list of resources, not specific names, but types of resources that might be useful in the community, that you could hand to the community early on and say, these are the kind of things that might be useful. You have these in your community, which might help us as a community resource to identify who the players are that should be invited to the table. So we're not going in, recreating the wheel every time, or not not knowing exactly what to look for. Again, it goes back to that not knowing what we don't know. So if we had a tool like that, possibly even as developed as a community partners handbook, what to expect in an IRT. And the Colonel and I talked about that, and one of the things that my staff are working on is a handbook for us internally, what we need to do, what we need to anticipate. We try to do a mission, we apply every 2 years. So in a 2-year time period, some of those things are forgotten and lost. And if we can jot that down into an organized plan, this is what we need to do at each step, it would be helpful. I use the incident command training for my staff this year. We did NIMS training in advance, so we would have an organized way to match our set of skills with the military set of skills. There's also a Boy Scout dad, and used to be a fire service instructor, and there's a knot called the Beckett or the sheep bend. It's a knot used to tie 2 unequal pieces of rope, or a rope and a knot together. And I liken the military and the civilians to 2 unequal pieces of rope that have to be tied together to be useful. And I felt like the incident command system was that knot. So I felt that was very helpful. That training can be done online. Our staff could do that on their own. I felt like possibly a face-to-face class would have been more beneficial for us, but the online training through FEMA was a good start.
It's really excellent advice. Thank you. So, Ms. Mary, over to engineering, very similar question. You've been a very, very strong advocate of the program, and finding additional resources, ensuring that the camp's going to be maintained after we leave, or continue to grow and continue to build once the military, or if there's a gap. How do you maintain that resource stock in the background and advocate?
Well, one of the first camps we hope to hold is all the military to come back and spend a week with us and be able to see what you've created. Because we tell you all the time, you created this, look around. And we bring children for you to meet that have special needs. You know, Allie's blind, but she can't wait to ride the horse at the camp. Arlie's in a wheelchair, 3 years old, cerebral palsy. I got to tell this story. It's not the same type of story, but it's a true story. Arlie is 3 years old, saw on the mother's computer, military on top of the roof of one of the cabins, working on the roof of the cabin. And, oh, Mama, look, the pirates are building me a castle. Your uniforms look like look like pirate outfits to her. But I feel like as far as maintaining it, when we have children come into camp, we're going to have people that are going to volunteer coming out of the woodwork. They're going to want to be a part of doing what they can to help maintain the camp, keep it going. Of course, we raise money all the time. Anybody in Mississippi next week? We've got a golf tournament. You know, there's always things we're trying to do to raise the money we need to get all those supplies that we have to have. But it's going to be easier when we have these precious children that are using the facility.
Thank you.
And I love what they've been saying. We hope to have a medical clinic next year, and we're learning what you're saying, and we're going to I'm going to talk to you later. You know, we're learning what we need to do. This is great.
Perfect. All right, so if the audience does have any questions, please pass your note cards forward. We're getting towards the end of the session, so this is your time. But we will go to some final parting thoughts from our panelists. As these individuals, I'm going to say initial planning meeting again, Ms. Mary. I know you were saying you don't know what IPM is. Initial planning meeting, they're about to go into their first meetings with our community partners for next year. So, and that's in the next 2 to 3 months that they'll be doing that. What were some things that you wanted to know at that very beginning point, outside of the many things that you didn't know that you needed to know?
Well, we were just so in awe of the fact that the military was there. But I really don't even know how to answer that, because we were excited the military was coming. We just saw this 326 acres of wilderness, and we couldn't imagine how it was going to change. And it didn't matter how many times we heard it was going to change. We couldn't imagine that happening. So I'm not even sure what to say. But as we built up that communication and we got to know the people that were coming for the planning sessions, and we felt more comfortable asking them questions than we did right at first.
And one of the things you had mentioned also was having them bring to the table what their intent was or what they could do at that IPM versus what you need to potentially hire contractors for or look for outside resources, because time is of the essence at that point.
Right. We had hired architects to do all the work. We had all the social, economic and environmental studies done and everything. And so we thought we were prepared, but then there were things we weren't prepared for. And when the military would start, we had certain things that we had set as goals with our board, with the credit union that we ended up borrowing some money from. We had set certain goals, and the military might not have followed those goals every time. They were doing great things, but it wasn't always what we expected them to happen next. Well, a maintenance barn. We didn't know there was fixing to be a maintenance barn, and suddenly there was a maintenance barn. We needed one, but it wasn't what we initially had said needed to be done, and it got done. And so that would have been a great thing to have talked through maybe a little bit more. It's been invaluable as far as storing materials now, and I'm glad we've got it. But that was something that we had not expected to happen, and suddenly we had that. And of course, we watched it going up and just loved it. We, got 735,000 pictures of it because it was the first building. We just didn't get enough pictures of it, and we were so thrilled. But sometimes what we expected to happen, it wasn't happening, and it probably had been said that it wasn't going to, but we didn't quite understand all that. So again, it's that communication and building those relationships with people that were coming to see us, but having that opportunity to, ask questions and talk to people. It's invaluable.
Absolutely.
Open, honest, ongoing communication is essential for the projects. It's important for the community partner to know where we might be interfering with the mission of the project. I think there's some times where our agenda is different than the military training mission, and there could be a rub there. But if there's open, honest, ongoing communication, I think it'll eliminate some of that. One, in the after action report, there were 2 items that I noticed. One was we provided snacks and drinks for the patients that were less than healthy. And I'll take ownership of that. We did that, and I feel bad about it. We won't do it. We'll do better next time.
But the fried pie was so good.
And the other item was we pushed too hard for output. And I'll take ownership of that, and I wouldn't change a thing. I will do that every time. I will push to get every patient seen that we can get seen. So that was our agenda, and the military's agenda may have been a little different. So by having those open, honest conversations, we know where we're going, what we need to change, how we can work together to make things work. Also, that ongoing planning before. The more you can understand, the more you can get planned before the event, the more successful it's going to be. I recall the last day of the clinics, 2 of my staff who had been working 16-hour days for the last 2 or 3 weeks sat down on the couch waiting for the last patient to leave, and one of the young ladies looked at me and said, "Joel, is it always this intense?" And my answer was, "Damn well better be." Because we wanted to do, we have this tremendous resource we want to take full advantage of it while they're there. So the more you can plan, the more you can anticipate things, it removes some of that burden, some of that stress. There's stress on the community and people you don't even see, the spouses of the community partners. My wife refers to my friends from the Air Force that were in as my damn Army buddies. So, she knew I was working 16-hour days, and then would get there would be some special event I would have to be out for another 6 hours at night, and even though we were training and planning and recreational activities for those, it was still hanging out with my damn Army buddies.
Thank you.
So one thing that we did different this year than last year, which I think is a good takeaway and it seemed to work really well, is that from the very first site visit, if you'll remember Senior Master Houston and Captain Polos, the military met in the local judge executive's office in the county where the C2 would be located. That was really helpful from the get-go because that was, I don't know, what were we, 8 months out, 9 months out? And so having the military there on site in that particular county, then the word of mouth started spreading. The military is here, they're coming for some clinic, we don't really know what it is, but we're gonna get more details about it. And then each time the military came back, we inserted back into those counties and had the meetings there. And the final planning meeting, we brought together the community leaders. So in each of the counties, we at DLG invited the judge executives, we invited the health department directors, we invited the council members and magistrates and the pastors from the local churches. And they all came together for a luncheon with the military that was there for the final planning meeting. And the C2 folks got up on stage and did a Q&A with the community. And that was probably about 2.5 months out of the clinic taking place. And I think that was really beneficial because that helped me engage them in having tables at our DLG Resource Center. We did have substance use disorder programming at some of the tables and others. And that was really bubbled up out of that community military luncheon that we did. So that's one thing you might want to think about, not keeping yourself removed at a hotel site for your planning, but to do it right there in the community.
Yeah, that's really great advice.
I think the key to remember is that it's innovative readiness training, not rigid. When we put the applications in, it's a rigid process for us to put application in. I'm going to say that the first year we did our project, the 5 sites that we listed, we actually did not do a single clinic at the locations that were initially put in. And that's because at that initial planning meeting, as we started going around with the C2 group, we realized pretty quickly that schools met the need for what you were trying to do from a medical perspective way better than community centers and health departments or anything else that we came up with initially. So I think, making sure that the local community, when you come in, understands that while they've put their application in, they've gotten to this point, if there's a better facility to have that program in that community, then you all are certainly open to looking at that and making those changes as you move along the fly.
Excellent. All right, so we have a few questions from the audience, and we're coming in on our last 10 minutes. The very first one's actually directed straight to Andy. So how did the one county find out about IRT that ended up bringing it to you? Was it a service member from that community?
Actually, I think they had attended a meeting of the Georgia National Guard, and somewhere in that process, somebody with the National Guard was familiar with IRT and maybe had participated in one at one point. And so he brought that up to the local community as an opportunity for them to take advantage of.
Oh, that's very nice. All right, so the next question. I'm sure once the military arrives, the community members and organizations wanted to be involved, especially in these recurring ones once they know what this is. How did you manage the community's overwhelming response to want to help and be a part of these missions? And you can volunteer.
Right now, well, I know when in each of the communities that we had, the first time we had a mission, we pretty much let the communities decide if they wanted to do something to do something. And so I would say at the end of that mission, they had 3/4 of their food left over that the military had provided because the communities did something everywhere, every day. So we tried the second time to do a community night where each of the site locations had something to do for them, for the community, and then tried to manage through the site OICs anything additional that might occur so that because they knew what they needed to do from a training perspective after hours, and allowed them to sort of work with local groups that wanted to do anything to try to mitigate the constant barrage of cakes and cookies and fried food and whatever else you could fathom or imagine.
Thank you. Anyone else want to take that one?
We found something similar. In the first mission we had lots of things coming in randomly. We found that in additional missions that if we organized that through one group, it was more efficient, and we were able to. Our group coordinated donations of food and money and to meet the exact needs of the mission, and instead of just allowing it to come in. We were able to do during the middle of our mission was Father's Day. One of our clinic sites was in a church, so we made the decision to close the clinic for that day early on before it ever started. We planned to close that day and had a military appreciation day. We were able to do a 5K run, a cabbage ball tournament, which is like softball, cornhole, gaga ball, rented the local bowling alley, and then took everyone from all three sites to dinner at a local restaurant that evening. So it was a good opportunity for us to get to know each other with the community partners, and for the community to see those folks. One of the additional things that we were able to get from the mission was the career exploration opportunity for some of our youth. In missions, we've had kids come in to volunteer from schools to work with military professionals to see that there are career opportunities in the military for these folks that don't involve carrying a rifle, that they could be a nurse or a dentist or study logistics or any public affairs, any of those other fields. So that was a great opportunity for us. One of the most exciting one of the most exciting community activities we had this year, our Boy Scout troop does a flag retirement ceremony twice a year. We invited our folks from the clinic to come and help, the military to come and help. So we had about 30 young men and women in Scouting BSA that folded and retired flags alongside about 30 military personnel. They will remember that forever. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I told my Boy Scouts that I was coming to this, one of my youngest scouts said, "Tell Colonel Andy." I said, "Hey."
That's neat. Well, our mission this past year went from February through the middle of August, so it was over a wide period of time. We kept a calendar. We asked everyone to call the office and let us assign you a date. And some people would want to take food out to the site and cook or fix food, or they wanted everyone to come to their church or their club or their home for a meal. But everything went through our office, and we kept a calendar of everything. And we're also very careful to thank them.
Yep. Public health was a concern and a barrier we had to address. Where do you stop with donations? Where is it coming from? Is it being cooked in a commercial kitchen, or is it coming from somebody's home, or is temperature being maintained? So we were careful to guard against that, and we stepped in as an organization to be the one that said, we can only take this or we can only take that. So it wasn't the military saying we can't eat what you brought. So we bore the brunt of that, and it's important to work with the community partners to set those standards up front.
Joel, you sound like a military member. In fact, you just sound like a public health officer right there. I'm sure you guys are out in the field going, yes. Okay, so we're really going to wrap up here. Any last parting comments from our wonderful panelists that you really wanted to talk about that we haven't addressed yet? Not to put you on the spot. You do not have to talk if you don't want to.
I'm gonna say, y'all, one of you forgot to pick us for 2020. So you go back, you look that back over, and that we did put an application in for 2021, and would love to have you.
So I'm playing off of you. I think we're in the pipeline for 2020, and we're really excited about it. And I need to check with folks about that to be sure. But we showcase this IRT program at our Governor's Local Issues Conference that takes place every summer. And the public affairs person for this year's IRT, Michael Hahn, put together a great video, and we showcased that. When it was all over, there are many local officials that attend. We have 700 to 800 local officials, and we have state officials as well. Well, they came up to me. While the military is here next time, let's make sure we get them sightseeing. We'll get discounts to distilleries or to the horse farms, or take them over to Keeneland. So that's something that I would like to build on the front end and the back end, because that's a special perk and relaxation for all the hard work that you do. So we want you back in Kentucky.
Well, you just said distillery, so.
And come. I'll come.
Might be a dry mission. Sorry if it is.
We too have a 2021 application in from Missouri, and we have 3 sites identified that will put us within a 15-minute drive of 5 states. So I think it gives us the opportunity to touch a big part of the Mississippi Delta in the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi River area. We have a position to be able to touch lots of folks, touch lots of lives in impoverished areas. The military will want for nothing when they're in our community. The unofficial mantra at our previous mission was work hard, play hard. We will have fun, and we will work side by side. And life stops for us when you're there. Our entire focus is that mission.
Mm-hmm. Well, ours is, it's for the kids. You hear the military out there, they'll be out there working, and you hear a little chant getting started. Mississippi, the temperature is 100 today, which means it feels like it's 110. And they're saying, it's for the kids, it's for the kids. So they keep working because they're pushing, remembering that who they're doing this for, that it's for the kids, and that's why they're there in the first place. The main thing I feel like I have to say over and over and over is thank you. Mm-hmm. I was so appreciative of the fact that this exists, this program exists, and the fact that we've been able to tap into it, and that we have the services of the IRT coming to Crystal Springs, Mississippi, our little town, and helping us build this wonderful, wonderful, only one in our state facility for children and adults with special needs. So the main thing is just thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I honestly, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you all taking the time to come here to address our military folks, your vast experience and knowledge in all of this, and of course the support that you've had for these missions and our troops. So thank you very much. And everyone, they will be staying with us for lunch, so please take some time with them and just gain more experience and knowledge while we have this captive audience. And there will be pamphlets out behind when you walk out the doors. I'm learning to read sign language every single day. And I have a few admin notes as well before we start clapping. Award recipients should stay in the room after this, please. And yes, sorry, I'm learning to read in front of in public as well. All the materials will be on Huddle that you saw here today in the video, so we can repeat also. All right. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and go to lunch, and let's thank our community partners. All right. Thanks, guys. You guys were in. Come on.